get started. So somebody was asking what we are doing. I'm trying to look for the name. Pixel Pioneer. So this is what you're doing. So far this is what we've done. We've looked at variables. We've said variables like name is Mary. Excuse me. We've looked at this kind of variables. Oh, what am I doing? I'm supposed to get something. Oh, okay. So we've looked at variables like this one right here. Name is Mary. We've looked at variables like this that store numbers. We've also looked at variables that store Boolean, Boolean which is true or false. We've looked at lists such as this one right here. And we've also looked at data types: strings, integers, Boolean, list, dictionaries. There are so many. Oh, this is supposed to be etc. etc. Let me just use this one. So this is missing something. Let me try to reduce the. So this variable right here has an issue. It's because we are assigning a string to a variable, and when you assign a string to a variable, we're supposed to use quotation marks. Okay, so this was missing quotation marks. If you're using an integer like here, you do not need quotation marks. Okay, we just need to specify the let me do this. I'm having a hard time. Okay, so when you are assigning a string to a variable, you use quotation marks like I've clarified. If you're using an integer, it's just the number itself. There's no strings. If it's Boolean, true or false, it's just like that. And if you're using a list can be defined like so. So what are the prerequisites for this course? So let's just look at the prerequisites real quick. So the prerequisite for this class are that you understand computer basics, that you know how to install tools on your computer such as VS Code and the Python interpreter. You also need to know how to work with the Python interpreter, to open it, and also to how to call the Python interpreter inside your VS Code. You also need to know how to create a project and open it in VS Code. And you also need to have read the article I shared, Learn Faster, Learn Smart. I shared on Discord earlier today. So those are the prerequisites for this class. If it's your first time here and you don't know what you're talking about, I would suggest you go back and look at class 0, class 0, class 1, class 2, class 3. This is class 5, which is the 6th class in this course. So we are now diving deeper into software engineering. Some of you are at speed, some are slowly catching up, and some are still confused. Whatever stage you are, that's exactly where you're supposed to be. That is exactly where you should be. However, you need to keep growing, keep practicing, reading tutorials, looking at examples, and following the course, participating in all the classes. Like I keep saying, tech is wild and it's a lifelong journey. As a matter of fact, I myself am learning mathematics. I'm currently doing MIT open course. Currently on lecture 3, and learning is also not easy. It's very uncomfortable. You see, the moment you hold your phone to watch TikTok videos, you can do it the entire night. Okay, I've tried that. You can watch videos the entire night, but the moment you open a book to read or maybe to watch a tutorial on programming, you'll sleep in 30 minutes. Not even in 30 minutes, in 5 minutes. As a matter of fact, if you're struggling to sleep, just start studying. Pick maybe software engineering, start watching a tutorial. You will sleep in seconds. So learning is uncomfortable, but regardless, we keep learning. Just doing a quick check to confirm that my feed is okay. All right. Secondly, don't try to memorize anything, and that is the mistake almost everybody does when they are trying to learn how to code is they try to memorize things. Don't try to memorize anything. What you need to do is to develop a holistic approach or a holistic understanding of the entire concept, okay? Which you can think of it as, under the hood understanding, sort of, for lack of a better word, of what, how this code will behave, how this function will behave. We look at functions in a second. If I type this, what will happen? Some of that comes from practicing so that you can build that mental muscle. As you continue to explore and work with AI, you'll realize that the job of a software engineer is to design a system, is to architect a system so that it can be fast and secure. Those are the only two things that matter, especially when you're working with software. You can think about any software you're using right now. The most important things, or the things that matter to you, are two: speed, safety. That's all. Anything else, syntax, I don't know, semicolon goes where, colon goes where, leave that to the AI. Focus on designing the entire system. However, I also need to clarify that is not vibe coding. We are not doing vibe coding here. We are doing what we call AI assisted engineering. And if you read my article that I shared earlier, the title was I shall own my own code. I shall own my code. I've explained this in greater detail, how to shift from being just a vibe coder where you don't understand how the code works. You just give the AI a question or a prompt, it gives you a website, and you're satisfied. No, that's not what you're doing here. We are only using AI to assist us, not to replace us, which is actually a sweet spot when you're working with AI. So we are going to look at quite a lot in this class. We are going to look at quite a lot, and therefore I do advise that you try to pay attention, follow through. Like I've said, I hope you do have your notepad or whatever, even a piece of paper is fine. You have your pen, you have your coffee if you're taking coffee. Put all distractions away. Put your phone on silent mode or on airplane mode. If you can get to somewhere quiet, I would advise you do that, because we are now thinking deeper in this course. I'm going to type some things I don't even know what they mean. All right, so that's it for introduction. Somebody give me a thumbs up if I'm still audible, if I'm still there. Wanjiku, hi, I see you're here. Kenneth Kiarie, good to see you. George Gitau, good to see you. Icon, you've landed, welcome. So this is what we've looked at so far. We've created variables, we've created a list. We've also learned data types. We've said we have strings, integers, boolean, list, dictionaries. As a matter of fact, as a software engineer, don't say text, don't say words, say strings. Don't say numbers, say integers. It's a good way of practicing the terms so that you understand what they mean. We've also looked at conditions, especially when we worked on the automatic home cleaner robot, where we said if the dog poops, go and clean the dog's poop. If the cat does the same thing, go and clean it. Else, go next to the fridge. So the mental model for understanding, we call them conditions. The if else is to say, if this is true, so this is whatever statement that goes here. Okay, so it can be anything. A statement that goes here can be like age is greater than 20. Okay, so if this part will give us true, we execute the code inside this part. And how do we know it's the code inside? We said we look at the indentation. Let me just change this. We look at the indentation. You see this space right here. This space groups code. Okay, this space tells you any code that is in this line is a member of this group of instructions. The same applied to else. So we are saying we have indented here, and that is indentation. So we are saying indentation, we use indentation to group code. We'll also look at another way of grouping code, but for now, just understand that. We also, let me just reduce the, okay. I think I'll use a different color for highlighting. Let me use that. So we, in the example, in the exercise I gave you guys, some of you went ahead and found this thing right here, which is elif, okay? Which is just a fun way of using multiple if statements. If you don't want to use multiple if statements, you can just use elif, okay? So this is what we've learned so far, and you need to know all this as a prerequisite to this course. But if you don't, it's still okay. You can still pick some of those things as we continue. So what is a function? Okay, we've done quite a lot of things. We've looked at conditions, we've looked at data types, we've looked at variables and whatnot. But let's try something different here. Let's assume we want to print all this in the screen or on the screen, okay? And the best way to understand programming is to always think from a problem perspective. And remember I said a problem is a feature, okay? Like for example, you hitting a button somewhere, that's a feature, but to a software engineer, we say that is a problem. So assuming you want to welcome your students to a course. So you say, hello, John, welcome to the course. We hope you enjoy the learning, okay? Somebody else joins the course. This should be a different name, by the way. So let me just rename that. Let me just say Kathy. All right, so Kathy joins the course. Again, you have to type the same exact things. You type all these. Say, hello, Kathy. Welcome to the course. We hope you enjoy it. Okay? Mary joins. You repeat the same thing. Hello, Mary. Welcome to the course. We hope you enjoy it. So for every student that joins the course, you have to type these 3 lines for every student. Okay? What problem do you see there? Do you see the problem? Can you see the problem? Number 1 is repetition. Number 2, there is a lot of code. Okay? Kathy, thank you. There is a lot of code. Look at all this. These are so many lines. You would imagine, and in real world applications, like the example we saw earlier, we noticed that a simple web page can contain like 800 lines of code. Okay? And we look at that again once we look at another example of a real world project. We'll see that a single file contains 8,000 lines of code. As a matter of fact, if you just Google, let's just try and Google and say, how many lines of code powers WhatsApp? Okay, let's see. So the backend only has 30,000 lines of code. So if you have to repeat yourself like this and you're working with 30,000 lines of code, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, up to 30,000, it becomes very hard to maintain. Okay, somebody has to read a lot, and we don't like reading. Okay, we do not like reading, human beings. So what solution do we have to this problem? We have what we call functions. So what does a function do? A function is a collection of similar, let me just, come on, I'm trying to zoom in. So a function is a collection of similar instructions, so that instead of running the same thing over and over again, we just define the instructions inside a box, and then every time we need to run anytime we need to run the same number of instructions, we just get that box. Okay, it's like, for example, if you work in a hotel and you cook, I don't know if there are any Nigerians here, fufu and snail. I know that offends Kenyans, but just bear with me. So you want to cook fufu and snail, okay? So you have your ingredients. You have the snail, you have the fufu, you have onions, cooking oil, whatever. So you have those ingredients. Now you would imagine every customer who comes to your hotel, you go to the kitchen, you cut a small piece of onion, you cut a small piece of tomatoes, and then you cook that fufu and snail. You go and give it to the customer, okay? And then you wait for another customer to come, and then you go to the kitchen, you cut a small piece of onion, you cut a small piece of whatever ingredients, and then you cook afresh. You see now the same repetition we're dealing with here. Instead of doing all that, what you can do is we can take our onion, we take our tomatoes, we take our snail, and then we cook them all once. Okay? So that every time a new customer comes, we don't repeat the entire thing we've done inside here. We don't cut the onions, cut the tomatoes, slice the snail or whatever it is they do, and then we give it to the customer. Okay? So that is what a function does. Now, what are the parts of a function? Now, this thing you see right here is what we call function definition. Let me just type it here. Function definition. Okay? This is what we call a function definition. So after we have defined the function, we've given it a name. This is the function's name. We give it the instructions to run. What instructions do we want this function to run? After we've given it the instructions we want it to run, we now call the function. Okay, so this is what we call calling the function, and just want to write here. So this is, we are not now defining the function, we are calling the function. Okay, so I hope you have written this down. Number one, we define a function. How do we define a function? We use the def keyword, okay, def, and then we give it a function name. After we give it a function name, we'll put this bracket here and we look at what that does in a second. After we've done that, we put this colon here. Okay, again, don't try to cram anything. If it's not sticking, just ignore it. Just understand what I'm saying, that we group instructions inside something we call a function, and then we call the function. Just understand that. Don't try to cram anything, colon, brackets, what goes what, no. So just understand function definition and how to call a function. Now let's look at this in a real example. Okay, so here you've seen I've said we define a function and then we call a function, but in the problem we are trying to solve, we said we want to try and solve all these repetitions you see here, David, whatnot, hello, Mary. So one thing important to note is that here we have Kathy, we have Mary, we have David. But in the example I've shown you here, there are no names. So what happens to the name? And this is where the confusion gets in. Where is Sam? Or Gigi, you can use any name to name your function. We will look at it in practice in a few minutes. So now, how do we pass in the name? Because you cannot serve the same food to Ogigi. You have to serve the same food to Ogigi, Mary, David, and so on and so forth. So how can we pass in the name? So we pass in the name here, which is what you call an argument. Okay, so when we pass it in here, we call it an argument. But when we pass it as a variable, name here is a variable, another way of defining variables. So name here is a variable, and the variable here is what we call a parameter. Okay, again, don't try to cram parameter or arguments. Just understand we define a function, and then here we pass a variable that we want the function to do to that variable, okay, to that thing. And then we define the instructions we want to run inside, and then we call the function. So here I've called the function 3 times, okay? It's because I have 3 names, John, Mary, and David. So I will call each individual times, okay? So what I want you to do is I want us to type some code, look at, all this, whatever I've said here, we look at it in practice, and then we see. So what should we write? So let's try to cook. Let's try to create a hotel, whatever. As you might have noticed, I rarely use a script when I'm doing some of these videos. It's because I always have an idea of what I want to teach, and then I just let it flow. That way, at least you get to relate to. If I run into an error, you understand how I solve that error and whatnot, instead of just writing a script and then following a script to the latter. So here we want to create food in the kitchen. So number one, if you remember from previous classes, we create a folder. So here I'm going to right click and I'll say new folder. And then, no, let's give our kitchen a fancy name. Let me just look for a name here. Let's say Racks, okay? This is Racks Kitchen. Racks Kitchen, okay? Then step number 2, we open our folder inside VS Code. So I'm going to open VS Code here. So I will scroll to the bottom and then I say VS Code. Wait, where is it? Visual Studio Code. No, not this one. Visual Studio Code, this one, this. I'll open it, and then after I've opened it, of course it will open our previous project, but we are working on a new project. So I'm going to say file, open folder, and then I will open our kitchen. What did I call it? Oh, Racks Kitchen. We open it, okay, and then we will say trust this author. So number one, what should sorry, not number one, we are at step number 3. We create a document that explains what we are trying to do. So for now, we are going to start very simple. We are going to create a function that adds 2 numbers, okay? So let's try and see. So here we'll create a new file, call it readme.md. Then inside readme.md, we are going to say calculator. Okay, we want to create a calculator. So what will this calculator do? This calculator will have the first number, it will have the second number, and then it will have an action which will be add number 1 and number 2, just like that. And then it will print the results. Okay, so let's see. So we are going to start by creating our instruction file, which is main.py. You can call it anything. You can even call it racks.py or rackskitchen.py. Remember from previous classes, we were just calling it main.py, but you can call it anything. So let's call it rackskitchen.py. Remember, .py means this is a Python file. It contains Python instructions, okay? So inside, we are going to first create a comment. Remember when I said when we start a sentence with a hashtag, it means we are telling the Python interpreter, ignore this line, do not execute this line, okay? So simple calculator, and then down here we are going now to create our function, okay? So number 1, how do you define a function? You use the diff keyword. So you say diff add a number, and then you put those brackets and then colon, and I'm creating an intentional bug here so that we can see what a parameter is. And then inside we are going to say print. So we are going to say print number 1 plus number 2, okay? And then after we've done with the function, we are going to come here and call that function. So you'll say add number. That should be numbers, by the way, add numbers, and then we do that, okay? So let's open the terminal, call the Python interpreter, and give it our file and see what happens. So I'll come to this here, I'll say terminal, I'll say new terminal, and then down here I'm going to call the Python interpreter, and then I will say what is the name of the file? What is the file that has our instructions? That is rackskitchen.py, okay? And I run our code. Python was not found. Run without arguments to install from the, okay, so the interpreter is missing. The interpreter is not there. I wonder what happened. So let's see if we have the interpreter. So I'm going to come here and look for Python interpreter. Oh, Python is right here. Why is it not printing? Okay, so we are using PowerShell. Let's try and use CMD and see if it will recognize Python. Okay, or am I the one typing it wrong? So let's just go to CMD, command prompt, and then we'll close this PowerShell, and then we'll run the same thing, which is Python, that is rax kitchen.py. Python was not found without arguments to install advanced app settings application. What is going on here? Why is okay? Let's try to open Python here and see if it's working. Okay, so we look for Python. Where is it? Python 3.14. Ah, that's interesting. So Python is there, but it's not running. Why? Let's try to use Python and then 3. So you'll say Python 3, then we hit enter. Again, it's not running. That's weird. Let's try to run it from CMD. So we'll say Python. Oh yeah, so our CMD does not recognize Python. Okay, so we are in the right folder, Cocobobo. It's just not Python installation. I think got corrupted. So whenever you encounter such an issue, we're in the wrong folder. Are you sure? No, I think we're in the right folder. So whenever you encounter such an issue, because you can see clearly Python is installed here, but for some reason our CMD is not recognizing that Python. So what you can do, you can try and install the Python interpreter and then reinstall it again. So, oh, yours has been doing the same way. Okay, let's try and solve it. So I'll go to the Python interpreter. Remember I told you how to uninstall software. So I will say uninstall, and then I will look for Python interpreter. So if you don't want to go through all this, you can just click on any item and then you click P, and then Python is right here. So I'm going to right click on it and say uninstall. That's taking a while. Oh, George, you had a similar issue. So it turns out some of you have been having this issue quite a lot. You didn't share. Mine is working. Icon, okay. That's good. Tesco Cyber says his has been doing the same. Kathy HW, hi. It was an update. Oh, okay, yeah, true. So uninstall successful. So we want to remove Python completely. So we want to find anything else that has the name Python in it and remove it. So we look for anything that has the name Python. And as you can see here, we have Python launcher. We don't want anything to do with Python. So you'll remove even that one as well. And then we come down here and confirm if Python is uninstalled. So you look for Python. It's nowhere to be seen. MNOP. Okay. So now what next? We install Python. So go to your browser, open a new tab, type Python, hit enter, click the very first link here, and then bring your mouse here. If you bring your mouse here, it will show you this window. Okay, so inside this window you're going to click on this, not this, click on this, and then it will install the Python interpreter. So let's just give it a second to complete downloading. Sorry, not installing, downloading. So that is the Python interpreter installer. That's an installer. So once it's done, we are going to click on this folder icon right here, and then here is our Python. So we'll just double click on it and try to find out why it's bringing issues. So I'm going to check these two and then say install. I'll say yes. Wekesa W, number 1 not defined. Oh, you're getting the error on your end. Okay, we'll look at it in a second. Oh, Carissa, you're facing the same issue. We look at that. Close. So after Python is installed, let's try to see if it's working. So we'll go here, type cmd, and then type Python. Oh, now it's working inside the terminal. So we'll go back to VS Code, and then we open a new terminal so that the terminal can restart. So we'll open a new terminal. We'll close the first one. Oh, I'm supposed to open cmd, not PowerShell. Command prompt. I'll close this one. And then let's try to run the same command again. So we'll say Python, and then we give it the file rackskitchen.py. Ooh, a whole bunch of errors, okay? So here, the most important error is this one, name error, name number is not defined. Now, remember when you said, in our case, let's first replace all these. Let's just say, let's put this in quotation marks and also this in quotation marks, okay? And then let's run our code again. I'm supposed to say CLS. And then let's run our code again. And as you can see, it's printing number 1, number 2. It's not adding the numbers. It's just printing number 1 and number 2. And like I say, this is now the most interesting part, or the most enjoyable part of coding, is you mess things up and see what happens. So what if we just want to print something like the numbers have been added, okay? And then we come here, CLS, I keep forgetting that. And then now we have the numbers have been added. But what numbers? Okay, what numbers have been added? We don't see any numbers. So going back to what I had explained earlier, I said for a function to be effective, for it to actually mean something, apart from just giving it the instructions right here, there are 2 other things we need to give it. Number 1, we need to give it a parameter. Okay, the parameter is that item which the function will perform the actions to. Okay, so whatever instructions you type here, we want these instructions to happen to whatever you pass here. Okay, and then later, now when we pass this here, we pass it as a variable, not the actual thing. We pass it as a placeholder or a pointer to what we'll pass later. And then here we'll come and now pass in the actual thing that you want to be affected by the code. So let's go back to our code. So what do we need? If we want the function to add 2 numbers, then that means we need to give it 2 numbers. Okay, so here I'm going to pass in a pointer or a placeholder or a variable to the 2 numbers. So I'll say number 1 and number 2. Okay, so once that is done, inside I want to put an instruction that will say do this to number 1 and number 2. So I will say result equals to number 1 plus number 2. Okay, are we following up to there? Okay, so now when we call the function, if we run our code right now, we expect number 1 and number 2 to be added. So we'll run our code, and again we are saying add numbers missing 2 required positional arguments, number 1 and number 2. Okay, so it's saying this thing right here is missing number 1 and number 2. Okay, so we might say, okay, fine, you want number 1 and number 2, fine, let's give you number 1 and number 2. So we'll come here, we'll come inside here and say number 1 and number 2. We've given it what it wanted, so we run our code. So let's run our code again. But more errors. Okay, what now? We've given you what you wanted. So read the error. It says name number 1 is not defined. It does not understand what that number 1 is. Now going back to our example again, remember here we are passing in John, not name. Okay, because this was a variable which should point to John right here. Okay, so inside our code we cannot say we are passing number 1 and number 2. We can pass now the actual thing we want the function to affect. So we can say 30 and then we say 100. Okay, now let's run our code and see if we get any errors. So we'll run our code and then we see the numbers have been added, but where is the sum? Where is the total? We want the total. We want to see you added these 2 numbers, then what? Okay, Can somebody point out why it's not being printed? I mean, we need to see 130 on the screen, because clearly we are trying to add number 1 and number 2. And we've given it, we want number 1 to be 30, we want number 2 to be 100. So we want to see 130 here printed. Why is it not being printed? Anybody who can take a guess? Oh, print results. Okay. Okay, we need to print results. So where can we print results? Again, this is the fun part of learning how to code. You mess things up. So let's say we want to print results here. So we say we want to print result. Okay? And then we run our code. We see what, we get an error. We say name results is not defined. Okay? Because remember we said indentation groups code. Okay? Indentation groups code. And when you're writing code, there are two things you need to know. There are two classifications of the terms. So if we go back here, number 1, we have inbuilt named, or we call them reserved names, and then we have user defined names. Okay, so here is how your project flows. Python interpreter will read your code from top to bottom. Okay, it will interpret every word, every icon, everything it sees. It will group them into 2 categories. It's either a reserved name or it's a user defined name. If it's a reserved name, Python understands it, so it knows what to do with it. But if it's a user defined name, then it tries to think, is this a value or is this a variable? If it's a variable, has it been defined at the top? If it's not defined at the top, then it throws the error. And that is what is happening here. It's because this results here is user defined. But as you can remember, if you use indentation, this right here, Python will interpret this as 1. So it goes here, it interprets this as 1, and then it goes here, it finds this thing right here. It's user defined, but it goes to the top along this indentation here, but it doesn't find the results. Okay, so if we come here and we say results equals to 80, okay, and then we come and print our code and run our code. So we'll say Python rax. As you can see, it's saying 89. The numbers have been printed. So there is no more. Results is not defined. Okay. So if you want to, the technical way of thinking about this is what you call local variables and global variables. Local variables are the ones that you define inside a collection, inside the same indentation. But global variables are what you defined at the top, or maybe you define at the 0 indentation. So you can think of it that way, okay? So this here is what you call a global variable, because it's global to the entire file. Anywhere Python reads, it will go to the top and then tries to see if you defined it. Enough of the confusion. Now let's go back to what you are doing. So this print should be inside here. Okay, it should be inside the same indentation as the function. So I'll just do that. And then I will say results number 1 plus number 2, results blah blah. That's okay. So let's print our code. And as you can see, we have 130 printed on the screen. Okay, I hope you guys now understand the flow of code, how we structure a program. In brief, we'll look at that deeper in a second. So what if we want to change the number? What if we want to add new numbers? So we can come down here and say add numbers, but instead of passing 30 and 100, we are going to say 2 and 5, for example. And then we run our code. So as you can see, 130 was added, the numbers have been added 130, and then the numbers have been added 7. Okay, so I want to give you guys 5 seconds. I want you to try this out, but instead of adding, I want you to do subtraction. Okay, I want you to do the same exact thing, but I want you to subtract like 30 from 100 or 100 from 30. So you can attempt that as I take a glass of water. All right, so I'm hoping everybody has attempted that. So we carry on. By the way, I have no idea which microphone I'm using. I don't know if I'm using this or this. I think I got confused when I was setting things up. This should be louder. Should be, should be better than this. All right, so let's look at that example. Let's subtract two numbers. Now, like I said, the methodology I use to learn anything or to teach anything is broken down into introduction, confusion, repetition, mastery. So we've been introduced, we've been confused. Now let's go to repetition. Let's try to subtract the numbers. So I will delete everything and then we will define our function. So to define our function, we are going to say define, deduct numbers, and then you're going to say number 1 and number 2. I am intentionally using different variables. So I'll do that, and then inside I will say output equals to n1 minus n2. Okay, and then down here I'm going to say print the output is, and then I'm going to put that and say output, and then down here I'm going to call the function. So I will say deduct numbers, and then I will give it now the actual number. So I'll say 90 and 100. Okay, so let's run our code and see. So we'll run our code. Oh, I said print instead of print. This is supposed to be print. Okay, so we will run our code, and then as you can see the output is -10. It's because 90 has been 100 has been subtracted from 90. So yeah, I was refilling my whatever, so let me put it here. All right, what's up? All right, so where were we? Now we need to understand why 90 was not subtracted from 100, but instead 100 was subtracted from 90. Okay, in Python this is what we call positional arguments, because Python will interpret this to this. It will interpret this to this. What if we swap these numbers? We say 100 and then here we say 90. So what will happen? Let's run our code and see. So if you run our code, we can see it's no longer -10, but it's now 10. So that is what you call positional arguments, because Python interprets them as per the positions they occupy when you pass them as parameters. Okay, so this is how a function works in Python. But let's dive deeper and see how this what am I doing? Let's dive deeper and see how functions are used in the actual world. Okay, what we've used is just like a simplified way of looking at functions. Now not this example, I was looking for another example. Oh, right here, this one right here. Okay, so it's interesting because here we are not just adding two numbers, we want to say hello to whatever person we pass here. Okay, so let's build this code. Okay, I believe everybody is on Discord. Let's build Discord. Okay, sawa. This little guy is bothering me. Now sit here and relax. So, now where are we? Marvin, yeah, back. So let's build Discord. What happens when you join Discord? So when you join Discord, you are welcomed. There's something that says, hello, glad you landed, or whatever. And then it says the name that you used. It will not just say hello stranger or hello user. It will say hello, and then it says your name, and then it welcomes you to the server. Now let's build a clone. Let's build a Discord clone. So we'll say define and then we'll say welcome, and then inside we want to say welcome name. At the point we are defining the function, we don't know the name. We don't know your name. We don't know who is joining. Okay, so we just say name. Name can be anything. You can even put here Gina. You can even put here what? Anything. So let's just use name for now. Okay, and then inside we are going to say print, and then we are going to welcome that person. So we'll say welcome, and then we say welcome name, and then we say glad to see you. Now here's the interesting bit you want to try. How about we add an emoji inside? So let's go to our browser where to our website where we can get an emoji. It's called Emojipedia, and then inside you are going to get an emoji. What emoji should we get? Let's get what? Let's get a fire. Okay, let's get that. Okay, and that fire we will put it there. Okay, and then after we've said welcome, what else can we say? We can say print. Then we want to say print start with announcement channel. So we'll say hashtag announcement. Okay, so that we've defined our function. In short, we've defined every action that will be performed on a new user who joins the server or the Discord community. Now let's call our function. So we'll say welcome, and then we call it like that. What else is missing? There's something missing. This code will not work. There's something missing. So we've given it the name. Okay, we've given it the name, but we've not given it now the actual person joining the server. Okay, so the function will be called every time somebody joins the server. So let's say the first person to join the server, and I'm intentionally putting quotation marks around this, is Moses. Okay, now let's run our code and see what happened. Python kitchen, we say welcome Moses, glad to see you, start with announcement. Okay, do you guys now see the flow of everything? Okay, now I want to do something interesting. Instead of saying Moses, I want to remove the quotation marks. I want to remove this and remove that, and then I want to run our code and see what happens. So we'll say CLS, and then we say, hey, Moses is not defined. But come on, we are trying to welcome Moses, and that is his name. Why are you saying he's not defined? It's because most of the things that are user defined are supposed to be put in quotation marks. Okay, except things like a function name, this one right here, because it's a function name, so you don't put it in quotation marks. So this has to be quotation. So we can welcome as many people as we want. We can say welcome. We can call the function again, but instead of Moses, let me look for somebody in the chat. Kokobobo. So we can say Kokobobo. Okay, again we can welcome somebody else. We can say, instead of Moses, Kokobobo, who else can? Wekesa. We can welcome Wekesa. Okay, we can welcome as many people as we want. We can try here another one, welcome. And then who else is here? Masembo. We can welcome Masembo. Okay, so let's run our code and see what happens. My goodness. So I actually use Linux as my operating system. So in Linux, to clear the screen, you do clear. So that is why I keep typing clear. So I'll do CLS, and then I'll run our code again. Python Rax Kitchen. And once we do that, we can see we have welcomed all these people. We have said welcome Moses, start with announcement, welcome blah blah blah, start with what, blah blah, start with what. So let's try something interesting. Okay, let's say if it's Moses we are welcoming. Actually, I've never tried this, so I just want to try something here. So inside here we are going to say if name is Moses, we want to say print welcome server admin. Okay, let's try and run our code again and see what happens. So I will clear here, and then I will run our code. 1,000 errors. Okay, invalid syntax. Maybe you meant this. Okay, or this. So this brings us to a very important concept in Python. as you might have noticed from the previous classes, when we were doing variables, this is how we were defining variables, okay? We were using an equal sign to define variables. This equal sign right here, okay? But this equal sign is not an equation sign. It's not to mean that name equals to Mary. No, it's what we call an assignment, okay? Operator. We are assigning this to that, okay? So right here, when we say if name is Moses, we are trying to say we are assigning Moses to this right here, which is not the correct syntax when you're using an if statement. So let's try to use whatever it is they've suggested here. So instead of that, we are going to say that, that. And then we run our code again, we see. So we run our code, and then let's try to see if it has said server admin. So here we are saying, welcome Moses, glad to see you. Start with announcement. Welcome server admin. Okay, it's not really what we wanted, but as you can see, so we learned about if statements, but as separate, separate, like group of instructions. We didn't learn about them, about putting them inside a function. So what does this tell us? This tells us that inside a function, you can put a whole number of instructions. You can put simple variable assignment, like you can just assign a variable right here, or you can even use an if statement, okay? If whatever name we are trying to get is Moses, then we will say welcome. They're supposed to be welcome, okay? Server admin. But again, there is a problem, okay? There's a problem because, as you can see, Moses, we want it to say welcome server admin. We don't want it to say start with announcement, because I'm the server admin. I already know there's the announcement channel, so I don't need to be told start with the server admin because I'm not a new user. So how can we handle that? Okay, now let's bring in the else statement that you talked about. Okay, so this if statement, we are going to put it at the top just after the function right there. Okay, we're going to put it right here, and then everything else inside, we are going to put them inside an else block. If I say an else block, I mean inside the same indentation. So I will cut this, and then down here I will say else we want you to print all this, and then we indent properly. So we indent like that, okay? Now let's run our code, because remember, we don't want Moses to be shown start with the announcement. No, he already knows there is announcement server because he created it. Okay, so let's run our code again and see. So let's see if Moses was told start with announcement. So here we can see welcome server admin, welcome Bobo, welcome Wekesa, welcome Masembo. So we do not see welcome, we've forgotten welcome name. This is supposed to be welcome name. We have to put this in quotation marks. And then we say name, and then put that also in quotation marks. Let's see, everything looks good, everything looks good. Okay, let's run our code again. Welcome name, what it is I'm missing, print welcome. Oh, I'm supposed to put that. Let's try again. Okay, now let's see if we are now getting the appropriate output. So welcome Moses, server admin. Welcome Bobo, start announcement. Welcome Wekesa, start with announcement. Welcome Masembo, start with announcement. So if the name is if the name is Moses, it prints whatever it is we want it to print inside here. And this is simply how you structure your programs. Okay, so number one, it's important you understand the concept of indentation. Indentation is how we group instructions. Okay, so here we are saying whenever we run this, only call the instructions inside here. Okay, and then here we're also saying if this returns true, I want you to run the instructions in here. Okay, any confusion, any questions before I proceed? Any questions before I proceed? Okay, let's carry on. I think my preview has disappeared. Let me just do this. I can't see you people. Oh my goodness. 11. Uh-huh. Okay, I'm not gonna be able to see your comments. I've messed with my screen. Anyway, now, so this is how we structure our programs. So as you can see, an if statement can be a member of a function, or it can be inside a function. A variable as well can be inside a function. It can be inside an if statement. Okay, so what else can be inside what else? But before we jump into that, let's look at something totally different. And I do beg you, go get yourself some coffee. This is going to be heavy. Okay, the next part is going to be complex and heavy. So I do hope you have your notes and you have your coffee there. All right. So now let's try to dive deeper into the complexity of software engineering. Now, assuming you have students, okay, you want to store information about a student. What do we need to store that information? So number one, to store that information about a student, we need the name of the student, we need the age, we need the course they are taking, and then we need the student ID. Okay, just normal information that you might need in school. This can apply to anywhere really, not really only in school. Think of, for example, marriage. If you're a husband, what do you need as a husband? You need a wife, you need children, not necessarily. You need a car, very important, more important than children, by the way. And you also need a salary, okay, because you cannot eat stones. So for now, let's just stick to students, okay? So if you are a student, you have name, age, course, and student ID. Now, this is what you call the properties of that student, okay? You can just think of it like that in a general sense. Okay, now what action can a student perform? Okay, a student can study, a student can submit assignment, and a student can attend classes. So let's try to put all these inside a function. Okay, so we'll go back to our code. Let's close this, we don't need it anymore right now. So we are going to create a school. Let's just create a folder here, call it 8 hours school. Maybe I should start a school called 8 hours, where we are going to study for 8 hours every week. 8 hours only, nothing more. What do you guys think? Should I? So let's open our project inside VS Code. So I'm going to look for VS Code here. I'm going to say this, Visual Studio Code. I keep opening the wrong thing. It's Visual Studio Code, not Visual Studio. Visual Studio Code. So I'll open it. And then, of course, it opens the previous project, but we don't want the previous project. We want to open, open folder. We want to open 8 hours school, 8 hours school, like so. Okay. Now, inside it, we start with a document that explains what the project is about. So readme.md. Now, inside readme.md, we are going to say school management system. Okay. So inside school management system, what do we need? So we need the student information. We need the student information, and the student information will be name. What am I doing? Will be name. Number 2 will be age. Number 3 will be course. Oh my goodness, course. And number 4 will be student ID. Okay. Now, what are the allowable actions a student can take? Actions, student actions. Student actions. A student can study. A student can submit assignment. And a student can attend classes. Okay. Now, if you look at the actions properly, there is no variable we can use, because the concept of studying is too complex for a variable, okay? And I will explain that in a second. So let's try to see if we can put this into a function. So we create our instruction file here called school.py, and then inside we start with the action. So let's just copy all of these and then we paste them here. We will delete them, by the way, they're not supposed to be there. They are just there for reference. So we'll say define study, okay? And then we pass, see, of course we want to pass in the student name, but for now we'll just leave it like so. And then inside we say print. So we want to print student textbook, and then below it we want to print student flip pages. And then after that, you don't have to type everything, you can just copy this one, paste it there, and then replace what is inside. So you'll say student read, okay? Now what other action is there? Submit assignment. So we can copy this and then we paste it down here. Now pay attention to the indentation, the spaces I'm leaving. So we'll say student, instead of study we want to say submit assignment. Now inside, what is involved for the student to submit assignment? So number one, they have to attempt the assignment, attempt assignment. And then number two, they have to give to teacher. I swear my English is good, it's not as I'm saying here. So those two actions only. What else can a student do? A student can attend classes. So we again copy this, we paste it here, and then you say attend class. And then here we are going to say student leave home. And then here we are going to say student enter class. Like I said, my English is way better than what I'm typing. I'm beginning to sound like a robot. So now we do not need this, so let's just delete them. Okay, so these are the things a student can do. Okay, these are the functions a student can do, but we have to define the student. We do not have a variable that defines the student, so let's define that variable. So at the top here we are going to say student name, or we're just going to say okay, let's say student name equals to Johnny, Johnny. And then down here we are going to say student age equals to 345. Okay, let's be creative a little bit. And then we are going to say course ID, or we can say student course. The student is taking the self-taught computer science course. Okay, just like that. Now we have the data, we have the functions, and we have the instructions inside the function. Okay, so what if we want to now run the actual function? Okay, we want to call the actual functions. What do we need to do? So at the very bottom here, for example, if we want to do study, we can say study, and then we say student name, which is right here. So we can just copy this and then we paste it inside there. There is a problem with our code. Does anybody spot the problem? Before I run it, can you see the problem? Oh Gigi, you are hungry. Does anybody see the problem? If I run this code, will it run or will it fail? So as you think about it, when you open your terminal, in most cases it opens down here. But I don't want my terminal down here. I want it here. So what do? I'll just come here and say terminal position. Where is it? Oh my goodness, what am I doing? I'm clicking the wrong thing. Let me zoom out. So I will right click here and I will say panel position. I will say right. and then I will just close this. We've not yet gotten to the AI part. So now I have this terminal and I have my code here. That way I can see my code up to the bottom. All right. So the issue is, like I said, this is what we call a parameter. So we are passing the parameter, yes. We have the variable here, but we have not defined the argument inside the study function. So let's come here and say we are going to pass in student name, like so. So let's run our code and see what happens. So we'll say Python, and then we say school.py. We hit enter. Student take book, student flip pages, student read. But as you can notice, we are not being told which student. Okay, we are just being told student take book, student flip pages, student read. Okay, we are not being told which student are we talking about. So what if we pass in the student variable here? So we'll say, we'll put this in quotation marks, we put a comma, and then we say student name, and then here we do that. Okay, student name take book. Okay, so we'll do the same for this other instruction. So we'll copy this, we'll paste it here. Looks okay. We'll paste it also here. Okay, so let's run our code again and see what we get. Python. So we are getting student Johnny take book, student Johnny flip pages, student Johnny read. Okay, now what if it's a different student? We have 1,000 students in a school. What if it's a different student? So what we can do if it's a different student, we can come here and change the name of the student. Okay, say Lucy. Okay, let's run our code again and see what happens. Student Lucy take book, student Lucy whatever, student Lucy. So as you can see, to change the properties of a student, we just have to come and change it up here. And if you can remember, this is what I said, it's a global variable. But what if I take this, instead of putting it outside the indentation here at the beginning of the line, I'm going to put it inside here. What do you think will happen? Let's run our code and see. So here I'm going to say CLS, I'm going to run the code, and we're getting errors because right here, this one is outside the indentation here. It's outside here, and yet we are referring to a variable that anything along this line does not have. Okay, anything along this line does not have this variable, and we are referring to it. Okay, so we are getting the error. Now let's go back to where we are, like so. All right, so do you now understand the code we have here? Any questions? Give me a thumbs up if we are still together. So the remaining bit is now looking at classes. If you ever seen the word class in any piece of code, that is what we were supposed to look at next. But I've realized functions only has been very heavy. So we can pause here, or we can proceed and look at classes. Can I get votes? If you want us to proceed, say yes in the chats so that I count and see who wins. If you want us to postpone classes to tomorrow, say no. I want to see if the A's or the no's have it. If you don't know what we should do, just say hi. If you are so confused that you don't even know what we should do, just say hi. All right, the eyes have it. Kids group. Kids group, I think this is the first time I'm seeing you. So you must be... Aha. Oh, now this is interesting. I think it's a tie. We have how many yeses? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 no's. InfoSnap, hi, how are you doing? Hang in there, hang in there. So InfoSnap, when we started this session, we said no man left behind. So if you are still confused, just head over to the help channel on Discord and post there whatever is confusing you. Think Apple or Gigi Rags. Okay, so what you're going to do, we are going to look at classes, but very briefly, okay? We are just going to go through it, and then in the next class, we will go through classes again, okay? So that we don't leave anybody behind, okay? So we'll just have a brief look at it, and then in the next class, we will go deeper. So let's proceed. Now, if you've noticed something here, Ojiji, just stick with me here, and Kokobobo, don't worry about the code, just understand the flow, okay? So we have two things here. Number one, here we have the data, okay? So I can just write here data, and then here okay, where was I? What was I typing? So we have data and we have actions or instructions, okay? Instructions. Okay, so this is the most important thing you always have to pay attention to when you're trying to write code or read any code. First, identify the data part, okay? This is our data, okay? This right here is our data, and then this right here is the instructions, or excuse me, or the instructions that will be performed on the data. Now, if you look at the structure of our program, by the given indentation, we have separated the data and the actions, okay? And I remember I told you indentation is what we use to understand groups, or how we understand a collection of instructions to be performed on something, okay? So here we have data and we have actions separate, okay? And this is not how we want to structure programs, okay? We want to structure programs in a way that the data and its associated icons are both stored, you know, under the same indented block, okay? Or under the same object, so that once we call that object, we just give it one data and it takes the data and it performs the instructions in one go, okay? So let's look at how we do that. So how we do that, and here as you can see, I've already explained how separating data and functions happen. So if you have multiple students, like student 1, student 2, student 3, all these students, you have to change the name here all the time you want to run your code, okay? Which is not practical, because if you have 100 students, you'll be coming here saying John 20 computer science, Mary 30 home science, whatever, Lucy automotive engineering, whatever. So it becomes very cumbersome to work with such a project. So that is where we have the concept of objects, okay? And you can think of object as something that contains both the data and actions. And when I say it contains, all I'm referring to, by the way, is indentation. As you can see the example right here. So we'll only have one object, which is student, okay? This student will have the data defined. What data belongs to this student right here? This is the data part. And then what actions can this student perform? And these are the actions right here. So when we say it contains both data and actions, we are basically saying they have the same indentation. Like as you can see here, they are on the same line, okay? Right here, this is the same line. That is basically what we mean. There's nothing else. And then inside, we define the data properties. So we have the name, the age, the course, and then now we have the actions. Student study, student submit an assignment. Don't worry about self and whatnot. Like I said, don't cram. Don't try to memorize anything. We will look at this in more details in our next class, but for now, we will leave it at that. All right. Who is with me? Who is with me? Yeah, I think the highs had a lot of votes, so we went with the highs, like so. All right, you are with us. Yeah, good. So let me leave it at that. If you are stuck, if you've been confused, use the help channel on Discord. Type there where you got lost. Type what you've tried doing and it's not working, and then we can pick it from there. I think that's it for this class. We've gone for an hour and a half, so you have 30 minutes to practice, ask questions on Discord. Yeah. Pixel Pioneer, we normally announce on Discord, so I'm hoping you are on our Discord server. Let me just share the link here with you again. Okay, I've shared the link there in the chat. Also, like I said, this course is absolutely free, and I'm using a lot of time and resources to, deliver these courses. If you are willing to support the course, there is a WhatsApp there's an M-Pesa number in the video. I don't know if it's visible, or you can use PayPal as well. For Ugandans, you can use mobile money. I shared in the announcement channel, so that we can keep this course going. I don't want to get to next week and I don't have money for electricity or money for tea. As you have seen, I drink a lot of tea. This is my second cup. So do support the course, and I will really appreciate it. Coco Bobo, you want to confuse people more. Desmond, glad to see you. Francis, were you here or are you just joining? InfoSnap, I see you. Rax, thank you very much for that. All right, so we do have office hours at 8 p.m. So if you're still confused, if you're still lost, take advantage of the office hours. You can be added to the office hours by inboxing me on Discord, or you can reach out to my WhatsApp. The WhatsApp number has been provided on Discord. Don't use the one on the screen. I don't use that primarily on WhatsApp. I think that's it, guys. See you tomorrow.